As a quick little update here on the 71 Charger Super B, I know it's been a hot minute since I posted about this car. Just been very busy with life lately, other projects I've been doing here at home, but believe me, this car has not been forgotten about by any means whatsoever. Love this car. We're going to get this thing for a real legitimate test drive here very soon. I've been tinkering away with it little bits here and there along the way, and in this video you'll see what I've done so far, but we're pretty much ready for a full speed out on the actual road test drive instead of just driving around the lawn like we did the last time. So this video right here, I'll show you what I've got done up to this point and exactly where we are right now. Alright guys, and then to finish this thing up, we've got to get the carburetor back on here. We've got to run a fuel line up from the fuel pump over to the carburetor. Before we connect the heater lines, I'm going to go ahead and flush out the heater core. 1, to make sure it's not leaking into the interior of the car. 2, to get it cleaned up. And 3, just know it's in good shape. And then we'll get those new heater lines. You can see I've got a new heater control valve. One I actually found on eBay. It was an NOS. So pretty cool to get one of those, which will replace this guy right here. So then that'll be all hooked up back together. We've got ourselves a new V-belt. I was able to find the right size, 41 inch. What else we got here? Tell him, donkey. Then the rest of this stuff is just kind of extra fun stuff. Doesn't really need to be done to drive. I would like to get my triple gauge cluster, probably pull out the factory oil sensor over there and get a sending unit going for the triple gauge cluster for the oil, get one up here for water temp, just so we know how we're operating as we're going. But that's pretty much it, guys. Just quick little things, getting it put back together. And then once we get a good test drive down, we can go ahead and clean all this up. Obviously, get these valve covers looking nice. Maybe paint the engine, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what I want to do. But that is it. Might have opened a can of worms on this one. What is going on here? Uh-oh. All right, the old classic Excel supercoil is coming off because it didn't test to be good. Putting a Blaster 2 coil on there. We've got our first fuel hose connected down there from the main chassis hard line with a little inline filter going to the fuel pump. And now we're gonna run a line up from the fuel pump to the carburetor, which we still gotta slap on there. If you ever wind up with a little stud on here that doesn't want to come out and you've got a nut that's just spinning the stud, you actually get a second nut on there and tighten them opposing each other against each other, and they'll lock in, and then you'll actually be able to go ahead and get your stud coming out. This carburetor gasket was on here from the old carburetor that used to be here, so let's get this off so this way we make sure we get a nice good seal. We won't wind up with any vacuum leaks. Get ourselves a new one going on. Nice. Let's get our carburetor going back on here. Check and make sure the bottom's clean. Check and make sure the bottom of this mating surface is clean. Good to go. We've got one vacuum line. This one's sealed. Just check for my vacuum lines, remind myself what's going on here. Get this back on the car. Sweet. Now we need to run a fuel line from down here up to the carburetor. And I'm ensuring I'm getting an even torque down as I go down with all these nuts. I don't want to tighten one super tight and then leave the rest loose. I'm doing a little bit on each one. So this way it seats the carburetor nicely against the new gasket. Okay guys, nice and on there. So I'm working on getting the fuel lines bent up tonight. We're going up from the fuel pump here, and I'm getting the fuel line, getting this fuel line here cut. So this way I can go up behind the alternator and around the distributor. It's kind of not a great shot to get this, but the way I've got this holly plumbed, it kind of comes close here to the distributor. So we're gonna have to just go around it and kind of down and underneath using this little metal line cutter tool. Then we'll get a flare fitting on it, and then I'll deburr it after that. Make sure we don't introduce any metal into the fuel line. That'll be good. I had this over here in the bench vise locked down, and then I was using my line bender tool here, so this way I didn't put a kink in it. And you can see, looks pretty good. And you can see those shavings popping out. Definitely want to always make sure you deburr. Nice. This way we don't have no little pieces of metal that are sticking in there left over from that cut that can get sucked up into that fuel line and introduced into your carburetor or the rest of the fuel system. So now we can go ahead and get a flare on here and get it installed. I couldn't get the double flare die to fit in there properly, but I gave it a single, I gave it a very small single flare, and you can see that I cleaned up the edge because you don't want to have too sharp of a single flare where it's kind of pointed and a hard rim all the way around it, because it'll create a high point that when your rubber hose is attached onto here, it can create a area where it actually can cut from the inside. It won't create any sharpness when we tighten down the rubber hose to actually cut it from the inside. So that should work really good for us right there. All right, that'll be a good starting point right there. And then we can go ahead and route it back underneath the alternator and come up through here and head towards the carb. All right, so I've got this line here tight, and you can see when I put this clamp on, I always make sure to go about an 1/8 inch lower than the flare. So this way you don't have to clamp right over the flare, which would compress it and could potentially make the rubber line actually squeeze and cut from the inside and then give you a break in your line. So the bevel is a little bit above it, about an 1/8 inch above. We are tight. Once you move it with your hand, you can't rotate it anymore. Obviously, it's nice and snug. Get a good cinch on there, but not too crazy. So that is on there good. Coming from up underneath the alternator, coming around here, I had to go past this way, leave room here for this little sensor, for this temperature sensor. Coming this way around, and then coming up to the carburetor right here. And is this the ideal routing? No, but this is enough to get us on the road, driving around right now, having a little bit of fun, because I might not leave this whole setup the way it is right now. This is just something to get us moving. All right, guys, and with that, the fuel system is officially complete from front to back, with that new gas tank we did in the previous episode coming all the way up here to our new fuel filter, going to the new fuel pump, then up right here through this fuel line to this Holley carburetor. We are fuel system complete, 100% now. So after routing our fuel line up there, I went ahead and got our ignition system put back together, and also the rest of the electrical going to the alternator. So this wiring harness coming here off the firewall travels down this way. Got all of our connections here to the back of the alternator. So now our charging system should be good to go. And now I've got my wiring running over here to a coil. I've got my crazy GM modified poor man's MSD that I put on here many videos ago. And I bought this like aluminum piece of cooling fin thing off of eBay, because you need to be able to have a heat sink to let this module heats up from running the ignition. It gets pretty hot. And then through contacting and conduction, this will help to dissipate heat from it. Yes, it looks hokey, but I don't really care, because it gets the car going down the road once again. I've got extra wiring. Got to cut all this down, make it look really nice into the future. Like I said, guys, I'm gonna pull off these valve covers, clean them up, get good plug wires on here. Right now, just getting the car down the road, driving it around the neighborhood, having some fun, really getting a feel for it and making sure that everything is good to go. So we've got the whole setup here with the ignition module, the coil. We'll connect our coil wire here to the distributor. Just like that. Now our ignition system is completely set back up. Like I said, if you're looking for a more in-depth tutorial on how I set this ignition system up, I'll link up top here and you can see the video where I put this thing together. It pretty much bypasses the ballast resistor, gets rid of points and lets you have an electronic distributor without having to get a orange box or some other type of, you know, Mopar style ignition module. This way it's a kind of quick little cheap bypass that works just as easily. And now from here, just need to pull off the power steering fan belt, get this new Dayco that I got here. It's a 17455, and that'll fit to get our water pump and fan belt pulley going, that I can get that thing on there, get the fan on there. That'll be good to go. And then the final step here is, like I said, flushing out the heater core, getting these heater core lines, which are right here, along with this new NOS control valve I snagged off eBay, which is going to be a perfect replacement for it. And that'll work really good right there. And then the final thing, I've got to get under the car and replace this transmission crossmember bushing. The one that's underneath there is pretty torched. So that's really it, guys. That's all that remains to getting this car out on the road right now and giving it a nice test drive. So really, really excited. So I hope you guys enjoyed this update video, and hopefully the next video you see is the test drive video of this thing out on the streets. Until then, I'll catch you on the next one. Didn't even have to put the foot on the pedal. That's so cool. This car rocks.